Hey guys, and welcome back to this week's episode of Revealed. This week we're going to come into the shop. We get a ton of questions on what machines that we're using and kind of just general flow of material handling and processing. So let's go out into the shop and we'll get started walking through. So when you first walk in, we're right in front of our loading dock door. The idea here, and this is where we can start talking about the flow of the shop, is that this is where our materials come into the shop, and this is also where our materials exit. So this space is kind of serving as a multi-function area. You can see behind me that we have some wooden shelving. This is additional storage for things that we don't use often, but then we also, typically this is full of moving blankets. These are, blankets that we wrap our cabinetry in and other items that are coming and going from the shop so that we can have some level of protection. As you can see, a lot of them are out in the field right now. We also keep a lot of our hardware that is on its way out or just coming in and kind of holding it for another job. That way we're not bringing it through the shop and having to handle it a bunch of times. So then this area here is also for storage coming in and out. We like to have all the appliances for a kitchen here in our shop beforehand so that we can get accurate measurements for each of them, especially when they're panelized or flush mounted. We have run into issues in the past where the manufacturer specs aren't accurate or the required openings that they recommend are larger than we would like, and we want to make sure our reveals are consistent, so we go ahead and shrink those up when we can. So a lot of those appliances will live kind of in this area as well as behind me to my right. Same thing with when we get drawers into the shop. So you can see we have a few drawers and appliances as well as some hardware that is about to go out and be installed. On my right side here is where we also keep additional storage, typically this side. So you can see right now we have a bunch of different pieces that are all wrapped up. These are parts that have just come back from the finisher. So we don't want to handle them a lot and bring them too far into the shop where they might get damaged. So we keep them here until they are ready to go out. And then same thing with some cases as well as additional hardware. And we try to keep everything kind of grouped together per job so we're not mixing and matching parts. So I had mentioned flow, and flow is super important when it comes to the shop. And I'll be the first to admit that we don't have it all figured out. There's a lot of room for improvement here in our shop. And the idea that we originally had for this doesn't necessarily 100% work out to be the smoothest of operations, but it's kind of what we have now until we can figure out a better solution or move into a larger shop. This space is pretty small for the amount of work that we're doing, the amount of tools that we have. You'll see a lot of our tooling is on mobile bases so that we can move it throughout the shop. So one of the larger machines in our shop is this here. This is an edge bander. What this actually does, it's a fully automated process to apply edge banding to the side of our cases. So this will feed it, it will cut it, it will trim it, and it will buff it all on its own. So this machine, because it's so large, it's very heavy, we can't move it, it is stationary. We actually have all our cabinet boxes and case parts cut on a CNC at our friend's shop right down the road. So when we're bringing those pieces back in, the first thing that needs to happen to them is to be edge banded. So we bring them here and edge band them through this machine. Here's one of the flaws in our system here. We couldn't put this machine up against the adjacent wall, so it does feed starting from left to right. So it kind of goes against the actual flow of how we would like to get that processed through the shop. Now we're kind of kicking it back to the front of the building where it came, rather than back into the shop for further processing. Again, it's just one of those pain points that we have to deal with, and at the end of the day, it isn't really that big of a deal. So as we walk into the actual shop space, it opens up quite a bit. The walls behind me over here are actually where our offices are. So once we get inside here, we have a lot more space to work with. So one of the first things you'll notice is where we keep our lumber. So right now it's pretty empty. We don't have a lot of material on hand at the moment, but again, it's fairly close to the loading dock where it comes in, so we're not having to maneuver it too far. And then with that, kind of the next step in the flow process is What will we then have to do to this rough cut lumber? All the lumber that comes into our shop comes in rough form. So the first part in what we'll have to do here, use the jointer. What this machine does, it will flatten and square the rough sawn lumber. So this is the first step in processing our rough sawn lumber. I went on way too long with that same wording, and this is where my man Doug comes in. So as we get through the process of jointing our lumber, one of the next steps would then be to run it through the thickness planer. And what that machine does down here is actually changes the thickness of that board to give us our finished size. Next to this machine, we also have our miter saw. The reason that this is in here as part of our lumber processing area, sometimes the rough sawn lumber that comes in, to get the best yield, we actually need to cut those boards first. So occasionally we do have to skip over the joiner, bring it here to the miter saw, and then backtrack to our joiner to start the process. That's not with every board, so it's again, not the end of the world to have to do that extra kind of back and forth. But ideally it would be in front so that we can kind of process it a little bit sooner. So also on our saw, we have this automatic stop, right? So if I need to cut a piece that's 24 inches, I can simply punch in 24 inches, and it will push the stop back to that 24-inch mark. You do need to make sure this is calibrated before you just kind of start running and gunning. Calibration on this is very easy. Next to our miter saw, we have our Hingeborn machine. So this also does some line boring. Typically, we're not using the line bore often. The shelf pin holes are typically done in CNC for us, except for when we do have the occasional small one-off project, we'll throw that on, and it is very nice to have. So this machine will automatically bore our 3-hole cup pattern for the hinges that we use, which of course are Bloom. Under this bench, we do have some storage. I know it's a mess right now. We have a little housekeeping to do. We do keep overstocked hardware as well as miscellaneous goods under there. And same thing with the lumber racks above. It's a lot of stuff that is molding that we don't necessarily use a lot and is extra and left over from another job that we may need down the road. So behind our planer, we have this table. This table is very multifunction. So you can see right now we have set up our vacuum bag. So it's a 5x10 bag that unzips, and you can put in different materials. We use it for veneering and just kind of general laminating if we have additional pieces that need to be joined together. For instance, if we need to make an 1.5 inch shelf and we only have 3/4 inch material, we can laminate those together completely flat inside this bag. Now this bag does come off the table, it gets rolled up, and we actually have a storage on the other side of this bench for the bag to live when not in use. So that way we can use this table as an outfeed table when we're running pieces through the planer. This table is on wheels, so we can move it around our shop in case we need to use it as a secondary workbench, which we do need to use quite often. In the back of our shop here, if you guys caught last week's episode, you would have seen that some of our field guys were in here building a staircase here. So they had just taken the staircase out and brought it on site to install. So we still have some of their temporary walls up as well as miscellaneous materials and tooling. But for the stuff that we're using here in the shop, we have this, our wide belt sander. This will help kind of flatten our 5-piece doors, anything that's wide that we need to give a good rough sanding. This is by no means a finish sanding machine. Some shops may use it that way, but we are simply using it as a rough sanding. And judging by its name, yes, it does save a ton of time. This machine is also on wheels, and we are able to tuck it back out of the way. Same thing with our shaper. With this machine, this is one of the most useful machines we have in our shop. It's very similar to a router. You can attach different bits. This will even take router bits. And we're doing all of our cope and stick joinery for our doors on this, as well as all sorts of different edge profiles, integrated poles, pattern routing. I mean, the options with this machine are endless. So definitely one of the most utilized machines in our shop. And this here is actually a power feeder. So if you look under, you can see that there's actually a couple of wheels that once we turn this machine on, it will automatically feed the stock through for us, applying good pressure down as well as pressure against our fence so that our pieces come out exactly how we're looking for them to be. This machine is also on wheels, and it'll tuck back out of the way and we'll pull it out when needed. Back here we just have random storage right now. It's some sheet goods that just came in and some veneers that we are currently processing. So if you noticed as we were walking through our shop, you can see all of these different hoses and spiral duct. And you might be wondering what they're for, where they go. These are for our dust collector. All of our large machines are hooked up to them. And then we do have a few kind of auxiliary ports where we can hook up to different machines when we're using them and tuck them out of the way when we're not. So if you follow this ducting all the way back, it ends up inside this wooden enclosure. You want to walk back there? All right. Now it's a bit messy and crowded back here, but this enclosure houses our dust collection system and also our air compressor. So the reason we put it inside this enclosure is so that it helps minimize the noise. These two machines, when they're running, the dust collector and the air compressor, can be incredibly loud. So having this enclosure really helps keep that sound down. We even went as far as adding some rock wool to the inside to really help dampen that sound. Coming back out into our shop space, you're kind of starting to get the idea of the flow of pieces through. So right, we started at the beginning. We are edge banding our cabinet parts. We are storing our lumber. We're processing our lumber. And as we're kind of coming back through to loop around, this area here is where our sheet goods are stored. Sheet goods we're making, a number of different things with our door parts, some slab doors, cases, countertops. I mean, you name it, it's sheet goods. And sheet goods are large, so we need a large machine to process them. This here is a sliding table saw, also known as a panel saw, and it is hands down the most useful tool in our shop. Being able to process a sheet of plywood on this machine is incredibly easy. And with a nice large fence and long table, you're not awkwardly trying to support the weight of large material. And it has a full over 10-foot run. So you can even cut 10-foot sheets on here without a problem, and you don't need any kind of additional outfeed fence. It's all kind of built in directly to this machine. We're doing everything on this. We're processing all of our rough goods, sheet goods. We're trimming all of our doors to final size. Once we make, shaker doors, for instance, after we take them out of the time saver, we're coming back over here and trimming them so that they are nice and square. Really, really useful machine, but they are very large. They take up a ton of space, and of course, they can be quite expensive. We also have a couple other table saws here in our shop. We have, a smaller portable contractor's type saw. Is a little bit safer to use when making those really small and, fine cuts. And then we have another larger saw here. This one we're typically processing all of our rough lumber. Again, it's right next to where our lumber is stored and where the processing starts. Part of my process in breaking down and processing lumber also starts with the table saw. So I'm kind of going back and forth between the jointer, the table saw, and the miter saw, ending with the planer. So to have a nice powerful saw in close proximity to where my lumber is stored and where my jointer is, for me, is key. As we continue to come through, we have tools like a molder. Although this machine isn't the most used here in our shop, it definitely has its place here. It is able to make custom profile moldings, and if we need some piece, a one-off piece, as long as we have the knives for it, we can kind of run those through. If you caught one of our previous episodes, I think it was making a curved molding, you would see this molder in action, actually making a radius molding. So these machines are incredibly useful when you need them. And they don't take up a lot of space either, so it's easy to tuck out of the way. That brings us over to our workbench. Number of different things happen in this area. You know, this is where the majority of all of the assembly happens. So it's kind of right in the heart of the shop. So, you know, behind me over here, we have our clamp racks, right? You can never have enough clamps. Case in point, and we have even more, they're just not able to fit on the wall at this time. And then we have all of our hand tools and handheld machines, so our sanders, our dominoes, etc. Everything's nice and handy right where you need it to be kind of fabricating and assembling right here on the bench. Why do you have so many holes in your bench? Well, there's a reason for that. Sometimes when you're working with your materials, you need to be able to clamp them down into place. These holes allow you to do that just about anywhere on the table. There's also a few other accessories that are similar, you know, that will screw into your table here, or sorry, attach into your table here and provide, you know, a positive stop so that you're not able to push your piece across the bench and you can kind of work comfortably in your space. So once we have, you know, all of our doors fabricated, our pieces, you know, done, ready to go, that's where we begin the exit. And now we're already halfway back through the shop. We can begin to exit out. Back where we started. And now we're on the right side, the office side of this kind of hallway area. So I hope this gives you guys a better idea of how our shop is set up and a little bit of a general idea on flow, even though, like I said, ours isn't 100% dialed in. It could be a little bit better, but hopefully it gives you an idea of what we're doing and how we're thinking about this process. I know we went over the machines pretty quickly, so if you guys do have any additional questions on what we're using or how we're using them, feel free to drop us a line and we'll try to get those answered for you. As always, appreciate you guys watching and tuning in, and please drop us a line, drop us a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching. You were recording that, huh? What do they call that? I don't like that. I need to get my water. Now I have a bubble. Went on way too long with that same wording. So behind our jointer, nope, it's a planer, that inside this wooden enclosure. Take that again. Anything else we need to touch on that? Its place, obviously. I don't know why I say that. Chop saw. Chop saw? I've never called a chop saw.